Welcome to today's live reading from Brilliant as the Sun, a retelling of Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Mysteries of Creation. And we are going to start the chapter 2 of Canto 2 today. Let's invoke God's presence amidst us. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. The title of chapter 2 is The Lord in the Heart. Shukadev describes how Virat Roop meditation develops to the point of supersoul realization and how the perfect yogi, freed from all material influence, attains the Lord's abode. He also describes the destinations achieved by yogis who are not free of material desire, and how they too eventually achieve perfection. The sage concludes by again glorifying the process of hearing and chanting about Krishna as the best means of elevation. Shukadev cited the universally revered Brahma as an example of a yogi who had successfully practiced Virat Roop meditation. The Vedas describe that when he rested at night, both he and the creation entered Vishnu's body. When he awoke in the morning, Brahma recreated the universe. I will repeat. The Vedas describe that when he rested at night, both he and the creation entered Vishnu's body. When he awoke in the morning, Brahma recreated the universe. Chapter 2, verse 1. Shukadev said at first Brahma had forgotten how to create. He then meditated on the Virat Roop exactly as I have just described to you. The Supreme Lord became pleased and gave him the knowledge to rebuild everything as before. Some adherents of the Karma Mimamsa school appeared discomfited. Noticing this, Parikshit said, Jaimini's followers say it is not necessary to practice yoga and meditation to achieve success through our work. They believe that moral action and ritual sacrifice to the gods are sufficient for the success in both this and the next life. Chapter 2, verse 2. Shukdev shook his head slightly in disagreement. The Vedic instructions regarding work are misleading. They promise worldly and heavenly pleasure to motivate materialists to act morally and to get them to acknowledge the existence of higher powers. No amount of material enjoyment, however, can truly satisfy the living being, just as food eaten in a dream cannot satisfy one's hunger. From his childhood lessons with Kripacharya, Parikshit remembered an instruction Krishna had spoken to Arjun. From the highest planet in the material world down to the lowest, all are places of misery, wherein repeated birth and death take place. But one who attains my abode never takes birth again. So this is a very important instruction for all of us to remember, that from the highest planet down to the lowest planet, all are full of miseries. And you can see Bhagavad-Gita as it is, chapter 8, verse 16, to read further about this. Okay. Even in the heavenly planets, living beings are forced to suffer the pains of birth, death, old age, and disease. How can we be happy where these miseries exist? Unadulterated permanent happiness is found only in Krishna's eternal spiritual kingdom. Parikshit looked at the followers of Karma Mimamsa who advocated worship of the Devas and elevation to the heavens. If only they could understand the temporality of material happiness, he turned his attention back to Shukadev, who continued to speak. Chapter 2, verse 3. To achieve enlightenment, you must disregard material comfort and be satisfied with the bare necessities of life. Perceiving the futility of worldly gain, live simply and determinedly pursue self-realization. Chapter 2, verses 4 to 5. He indicated the many hermits in the assembly. These ascetics do not even need beds. They lie on the bare ground, using their arms as pillows, wearing tree barks or discarded clothes. They eat fruits and berries growing freely in the wild and drink river water. If they need shelter, they go to the mountain cave satisfied with the Lord's provisions. They do not have to beg charity from the proud materialists. The ascetics he indicated bowed their heads and folded their palms as Shukadev continued with his teaching. Chapter 2, verse 6. Such transcendentalists are determined to achieve self-realization by serving the Supersoul, who is the eternal and unlimited Supreme Lord. Attaining his association is life's ultimate goal. Worshipping him destroys ignorance of one's eternal spiritual identity, which is the root cause of repeated birth and death. Chapter 2, verse 7. Shukadev's expression was somber as he went on. Everywhere materialists suffer the results of their foolish acts. By pursuing wealth and sensual enjoyment, they fall into a great river of suffering. Despite seeing this, they stubbornly refused to worship the Lord. From the corner of his eye, Parikshit caught sight of the Karma Mimamsa followers who appeared chastened. Shukadev's words must have penetrated their hearts. Placing his palms together, the king asked Shukadev to explain what the progressive yogi should do after perfecting Virat Roop meditation. Chapter 2, verse 8. Once the heart is cleansed of material desires by this practice, the yogi can see the Paramatma's spiritual form. Holding up the palm of his right hand, he traced the distance between his third finger and his thumb. With the forefinger of his other hand, holding up the palm of his right hand, he traced the distance between his third finger and his thumb with the forefinger of his other hand. Although in my case it is approximately 8 inches, the size will vary proportionately to each body. Placing his right hand over his chest, he said, "He resides here in the region of the heart. He has 4 arms. In his lower right hand he carries a lotus. In the upper right hand he holds a weapon, assembling chariot wheel. In the upper left hand in the upper left hand is a conch shell, and his lower left hand is a club." So if you have seen picture of Paramatma is a form of the Lord with 4 arms, and Paramatma resides in the region of our heart. And like it has been described, the distance between the third finger and the thumb, you measure the distance between your third finger and the thumb with the forefinger of your other hand. Not with the whole hand, just the forefinger of your other hand. You place the thumb, you place that forefinger of your other hand between the thumb and the third finger. Then you will see that is the size of the super soul. So size of the super soul in our heart has been revealed to us. Now it's another thing that the scientists and the doctors and all those working in research, they cannot see it with the naked eye. Because super soul is not going to make itself accessible to everyone, but it is there. It resides in our heart. And the size of the soul, as we have said many times before, is the tip of the hair, the 100,000th of the tip of the hair. That is the size of the soul. They both reside together next to each other in the heart. And Paramatma form, as we have seen in posters in temples, in ISKCON temples, it has got 4 arms. One arm has got the disc, one arm has got that, it resembles like a chariot wheel, yeah, we can say. And the in the upper right hand, it has got a weapon which is, like we said, like a chariot wheel, or looks like Sudarshan Chakra kind of thing. And in the lower right hand is lotus. In the upper left hand is a conch shell or a shank. And in the lower left hand is a club. Bit like Gada we see in the Hanumanji's hands. So I'll have to check for myself that in the this weapon in the upper right hand, is it a Sudarshan Chakra? I don't think it will be Sudarshan Chakra, because Sudarshan Chakra is Krishna's, isn't it? So maybe it's written here as it resembles a chariot wheel. So I will double check and come back to you later, next time in the reading. Chapter 2, verse 9. Let's carry on. Shukadev's eyes were partially closed in the manner of the yogis. He said, Lord Vishnu smiles in happiness, and his eyes resemble lotus petals. His garments are yellowish like the saffron of a kadamba flower, and are inlaid with valuable gems. Jeweled gold ornaments adorn him, and he wears a shining headdress and earrings. Chapter 2, verse 10. The sage's voice wavered with emotion, and tears trickled down his face. His lotus feet are placed over the walls of the lotus-like hearts of great mystic. On his chest is the fabulous Kaustubh jewel engraved with beautiful calf, and there are other jewels on his shoulders. His torso is garlanded with fresh flowers. Chapter 2, verse 11. All these are expansions of Krishna. We have to remember that. Shukadev trembled slightly. The Krishna living in the Golok Vrindavan, the topmost of the planetary, which is above all the planetary systems. Just remember that. Golok Vrindavan, as we say. Chapter 2, verse 11. Shukadev trembled slightly as he continued with his description. The Lord is well decorated with an ornamental wreath about his waist and priceless jewel rings on his fingers. He has bracelets around his ankles and wrists. His oiled hair, curling with a bluish tint, is delightful as his beautiful smile. So these are all the descriptions of the Lord. Chapter 2, verse 12. The atmosphere became suffused with ecstasy. Parikshit felt shivers of joy run down his spine. The other sages were also caught up by the intense emotion emanating from Shukadev as he continued. So just remember, the super soul aspect of the Lord is the localized form which is within our hearts, not just our hearts, within the hearts of all the living beings. Whether it's size of a microbe which you can't see with the eye, or whether it's a giant, everyone's has got the same size of the super soul. The size may vary a little bit, like it has been told. You have to measure it with the size of the index finger of your other hand when you are measuring the distance between the thumb and the third finger of your one hand. The Lord's magnanimous pastimes and the glowing glances of his smiling face display his extensive benedictions. One must try to always concentrate on this transcendental form. This devotional meditation gradually removes from the heart all the traces of lust, which manifests grossly as sex desire and subtly as desires for profit, adoration, and distinction. So this is what everyone is looking for in this life, isn't it? So if you want to get rid of these desires from your self, then you have to meditate on the form of the Lord, which has been just described before. That will vanquish these temporary desires from our heart, which have been eluding us since time immemorial. I'll give you the description of the Lord again, because I can't even imagine when I'm reading this. Lord is well decorated with ornamental wreath about his waist, and wreath is like, you know, in the Indian ladies wear that kardhani in their waist, something like that. It has got different names in different states. Kamarband, I think, something like that also is known. It is known as. And Lord has got prized jewel rings on his fingers. He has bracelets around his ankles and wrists. He has got oil hairs curling with a bluish tint. Is delightful, as is his beautiful smiling face. So this is the kind of the form of Lord we have to meditate on. If we want to get the all the anarthas, you know, all the bad desires going away from our hearts, and also get the anartha nivritti from our heart. Parikshit became confused. Master, earlier you explained that Virat Roop meditation frees the yogi from lust. Why do you now say this happens by meditating on the super soul? So this is the form of the super soul described to us, which is inside our heart. This is the form of the Lord, which is the form of super soul, Paramatma, residing in our heart. Now Parikshit is rightly asking this to Shukadev, that earlier he was told that Virat Roop meditation will free you from lust. Now why you saying that meditating on super soul will free us from all the unwanted desires? Shukadev explained that Virat Roop meditation will free one of the inclination for sexual activity, but the potential for sex desire reawakening will still be present. So just by meditating on Virat Roop, one may be free oneself from the inclination of sexual activity, but the potential desire, the sex desire reawakening will still be there. So by meditating on the spiritual form of the Paramatma, however, one will be freed of this also. Chapter 2, verse 13, Shukadev continued, the yogi should first concentrate on the Lord's feet, then he should progressively meditate on Vishnu's calves, the region between the knee and the ankle, that is the calves, thighs, and in this way we gradually move higher until he reaches his smiling face. The more intensely he concentrates upon Vishnu's limbs, the more thoroughly his intelligence becomes purified of lust. Those of you who have done yoga, the Hatha yoga, or the normal asanas which we do, when we do the shavasana in the end, which is relaxing your body after, first of all, you warm up yourself, then you do the asanas. When you do the shavasana, then they always say that go from starting from your ankles, you just go higher and higher up to the face, and you meditate and you try to relax yourself. So that is one kind of meditation they teach us, but this is the real deal, the real meditation as told by Shukadev to Parikshit Maharaj. Parikshit's mind went back to his school days with Kripacharya. He saw himself standing by his teacher in the palace shrine. Before Vishnu's magnificent altar, Kripacharya had explained that devotees can meditate on the deity as yogis do upon the super soul. So amazing lifespan people used to have those days. Kripacharya was the teacher of the Pandavas, Duryodhana and all his brothers, and Kripacharya was the teacher of Arjun's grandson as well. So amazing lifespans people had those days. This is the Dwapar Yuga we were talking about. And now this scenario of Bhagavatam is towards the end of the Dwapar, when Kali Yuga is just knocking at the door. Chapter 2, verse 14, Shukadev went on, spiritual neophytes who are still attracted to material enjoyment cannot concentrate upon Paramatma. They must first become purified by performing their prescribed duties, and after retiring they should take to Virat Roop meditation. Only when attraction for the Lord awakens can they commence Paramatma meditation. So this is very, very important as well. Shukadev Goswami is saying that the ones who are still attracted to material enjoyment cannot concentrate upon Paramatma. This is what is wrong with most of the society, isn't it? We are looking for Paramatma outside, when Paramatma is always there within our hearts. Why we cannot concentrate on the Paramatma in our hearts? Because we are still very much attracted to the material enjoyment. So we cannot concentrate upon the Paramatma sitting in our hearts. So for the Paramatma sitting in our heart, to meditate upon it, we must first become purified by performing the prescribed duties. You know, the Varnashram Dharma, whatever is our prescribed duties, whether, but these days the prescribed duties are all mixed up, because even if a person is born in a Brahmin family, is not necessarily a teacher or a guru to in a Gurukul or modern day schools, etc., or universities and so forth. And anybody who is born in a Kshatriya family is not necessarily working in the armed forces, and persons born in Vaishya families are not necessarily business people, and the ones in Shudra families not necessarily they are in the service industry, because these days sometimes people have to just get the job for what they have qualified, or they see we are interested in this, so we will go for it. But sometimes people take some qualifications, but later on they realize that, oh, my heart is not into this job actually. So this is why at the moment prescribed duties are all mixed up. But anyway, whichever prescribed duty you are fixed in, whatever duties you are performing for material satisfaction of this life, to look after your families, to pay your bills and everything, you have to become purified by performing the prescribed duties. Then after, when you are finished with them, when you have retired, one should take the Virat Roop meditation of Lord, and only when attraction for the Lord awakens, then one can commence on Paramatma meditation. This is what Parikshit Maharaj is saying, being told by Shukadev Goswami. But remember, our lifespans are not like the lifespan of the yogis of that past yuga. Our lifespans are quite limited, so everything has to be done in a different way. And as we know, Bhakti Yoga is the prescribed yoga for all of us. Krishna has told in the Bhagavad-Gita to Arjun. So let's listen what Parikshit is being told. Parikshit wanted to know how the accomplished yogi who had successfully meditated on the Paramatma should prepare to die. Now this is the most important question which Parikshit wants to know the answer for, because he only had 7 days and 7 nights left before the curse of that son of Shamik Rishi was going to fructify. I've completely forgotten the name of the son of Shamik Muni Rishi. I will put it in the comments later on. Chapter 2, verse 15, the sage said, when the yogi is ready to leave his body, he should not be concerned about the time or place. He should stay where he is comfortable and keep his mind and senses under control by continuously meditating on Vishnu. Many sages looked surprised. Parikshit guessed the reasons. Shukadev's statement went against the conventional yoga wisdom. Placing his palms together, he said, Master, kindly explain why the Vedas give specific recommendations about the time of a yogi's departure. If this is not important, Shukadev replied, these scriptures are only necessary for yogis who still have traces of material desires in their hearts. They are not important for the one who has awakened an attraction for the Lord. In this respect, Krishna reassured your grandfather when he said, for one who always remembers me without deviation, I am easy to obtain because of his constant engagement in devotional service. Therefore, the Paramatma realized yogi does not need to worry about the time and place of death. You can look at Canto 11, Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 2, verse 38, verse and the purport, if you want to read further about this. Now, from chapter 2, verse 16, Shukadev described how the yogi should prepare for returning to the spiritual world. To fully concentrate upon Vishnu, the yogi must merge his mind into the self and then, by means of pure intelligence, merge the self into the supersoul. So the yogi has to merge his mind into the self and then into his soul, and by the means of pure intelligence, merge the self or the soul into the supersoul. By so doing, he will experience full satisfaction and bliss, thus being purified of even the potential for material hankering. Parikshit was perplexed, merging the mind into the self by pure intelligence and the self into the supersoul. What did it mean? Noting his bewilderment, Shukadev explained the tendency of the mind is to accept and reject activities based on sense gratification. However, the self is Krishna's eternal servant. The soul is Krishna's eternal servant, but our mind, it likes to accept and reject activities based upon what it likes or what it doesn't like, because mind is being governed by the senses, or senses are governed by the mind. They've got the teamship between what would say some kind of camaraderie between themselves, the senses and the mind. They're like a team. Thus, merging the mind into the self means training the mind to accept and reject everything according to the Lord's instructions. So one has to train the mind according to the Lord's instruction. That is the meaning of the merging the mind into the self or the soul. To merge the self into the supersoul means to be immersed in Krishna's loving service. Now, those of you who want to see further about it, you can have a look in chapter 2, verse 38 of the Srimad Bhagavatam from Canto 11. How is this merging into him? Asked Parikshit. Because the Lord and his service are on the absolute plane. They are identical. Chapter 2, verse 17, Shukadev continued to explain how one can achieve liberation. In the material world, even Brahma and all the gods are subject to devastating time. This is because they are trapped by false ego and the three modes of material nature. However, a devotee who experiences love of Krishna attains a spiritual body free of these influences. Master, what are the characteristics of such devotees? Asked Parikshit. And yes, we have read about the three modes of material nature in chapter 14 of Bhagavad-Gita. I think I will have to leave the reading here because there's still quite a lot of this chapter left. Thank you for joining in today's reading. I wish you all a very blissful Krishna conscious day ahead. Do whatever we have to do in our prescribed duties in our lives, but serve Krishna in the capacity you can, and slowly it becomes easier and easier to do the devotional service of the Lord. Chant and be happy. Hare Om Tat Sat. Hare Krishna. And this is the picture of Gauranga from a book titled Gauranga by Jayapataka Swami, our Guru Maharaj.